the year that you ran for county exec against Kathleen?
That was in '97. People talk about whether you like campaigning or not. I don't think anybody really likes campaigning, but that campaign was one of the most satisfying events of my life. It really was, and it was because of you, Morris. It really was, because we lost, but it was very satisfying.
Well, I think there's a lot. One of the reasons I think that this is worthy of talking about is that the race was very close relatively.
It was extremely close. There's a couple things that happened in that race, and that is that I got a late start. And the second thing was that Paul Soglin resigns as mayor. So that's the last thing I needed, was a big turnout in the city of Madison. And that hurt me. Because in the end, I carried, in Dane County, there's 34 towns, 19 villages, and 7 cities. And we carried 55 out of 60. There was 5 wards in downtown Madison that absolutely killed me.
And then when it got down to the general election, it was the highest 2 candidates.
The highest 2 candidates, that was Kathleen and I. So it was kind of interesting. So obviously the top 2 candidates was Kathleen came in first, I came in second.
I think there were several really interesting parts to the campaign. One is the one that Mike already talked some about. The Isthmus area was, they all voted for Kathleen.
Yeah, there's no question. There was that 5 wards in downtown Madison. Like I said, I carried 55 out of 60 municipalities. But there were some wards, and I carried a lot of wards in Madison.
Right,
a number of wards. But those 5 downtown wards, I mean, it was 1,100 to 100. I mean, it just killed me.
There were some unusual issues in this campaign. The road that goes from Madison to Sauk City and then up to the Dells. I don't know what.
Yeah, 12 and 18,
and that was the most. It had the most accidents of any road in the United States.
So Morris came up with a great ad, and as Morris was so great at doing those things. I mean, he knew how to touch people and hit the right nerves, and I think there was like a pregnant woman or something that she died, I think, and a baby, yeah, and so it became a big issue, and Kathleen was trying to stop it, and the Liberals, and so we came out. Morris had a great radio ad. It was hard hitting. I mean, and I remember speaking to a women's group, and oh my God, they got up. I gave a little spot, and then they brought that up and how terrible that ad. And they demanded that I take that ad off the radio. I said, I'll take it off the radio when she agrees to support building that road, but not until. And it was kind of it was interesting thing that the leadership of that women's organization was, really coming down hard on me. But after the event, everybody came up to me and said, we agree with you, Mike. So again, it's one of those satisfying.
But when Mike says that he was a conservative, that's really not true. By most of the state, he'd be clearly a moderate.
I grew up as
I mean, his family
because
was.
my family was Democratic. My father served in the state legislature for 8 years as a Democrat. Morris is right. I mean, I was more of a moderate, and I always said that I think I could have been a Democrat anywhere else in the state, but not Dane County, because they were so so demanding, and I thought a lot of them pretty extreme. And
Yes,
so,
they were.
yeah. So that, and the other thing that he did is I'll never forget and still talk about is that he designed an ad with my daughter in it, and it was absolutely incredible. And Morris came out with the filming crew, and my daughter hadn't seen what she was supposed to do, and I remember her saying, "Dad, I don't have to say something dorky, do I?" And I said, "Well, no, I think it's going to be good." But we hadn't even seen what the ad was, and you came out, the filming crew, and you gave it to her, and she looked at it and read it, and honest to God, they did the take, and everybody looked at each other and said, "Well, that's a wrap." It's like it was perfect the first time, and she hadn't even. It was really amazing. And then they had like an extra 5 seconds, and I remember that. So they did it one more time because they used up that 5 seconds, and that was a wrap. And but the ad, Maury he knew how to. We had some people like where to put that, what stations and what groups and what time to play. But it was so good that you guys expanded it.
Well, she was so good at that. She was just a natural.
Yeah. But I remember it was so good that we put it into other markets, and then that was a genius move.
We spent most of our money on radio,
Yeah.
but and Kathleen on the highway issue, she was somewhat on the defensive because she was really she was against getting rid of this very dangerous road, and it was really cutting into her vote on the east side of Madison, especially with people that worked at Oscar and that kind of constituents that would tend to be Democratic, but they weren't these liberal Democrats, and so she was really having trouble.
I mean, Kathleen was in the public intervener's office, and she was noted for fighting all kinds of roads, and I think highway, was it 53? She said the highway to nowhere, she called it, and of course that didn't help her when she ran for statewide office. But they were afraid with 4 lanes that it's going to create all this new development, and we're just going to be like another Los Angeles, and we don't want that. We like Madison the way it is, and the people were getting killed, and so that was really good. That worked.
And our side had some trouble with the moneyed people, because they really weren't very much of a believer that this was going to be we were going to stand a really good chance of winning. It really came down to the end, I think. I mean, looking back at it, that if the Republicans would have thought they could have won, that if they'd have spent in the last 3 weeks enough money to keep Mike going with his radio ads, I think he'd have won. And they just they wouldn't, even Tommy wouldn't. He just wouldn't believe that.
But again, to Morris' credit, one of the things, and I really that was another master stroke on Morris's part, was we were on early with radio. I mean, I think that really set us apart, because we're out there early, and I was the only one that had signs. I had yard signs. I had 4x8 signs up, and it was really good. I had these big 4x8s. I must have had 100 of them up, and I lots of times you buy yard signs, you know, and it's like trying to get them out the door, take 2 or 3. And I remember we had people were coming in wanting yard signs, and I was like, you know, they were telling, well, you can only take 2 because we don't have enough, and that was again, you know, the other thing too, Morris, you had in these campaigns, it's like, well, what do you talk about? And you came up with like a 6-point plan, and that I really that made me comfortable too, because you know what? So what are you going to talk about? What's going to hits people's nerves to get them to vote? But Morris doesn't do that stuff by chance. I mean, you guys did some polling and then said, okay, what are people interested in? And so my 6-point plan was those 6 points that people were interested. That's what we ran on, and so that hit a nerve. I mean, all those things. It was a remarkable race.
Well, and um, we did a lot of lead drop stuff,
Yeah,
and and we lead dropped in the city. I think if one of the mistakes I think we made was we decided we just weren't going to stir up the wards in the Isthmus. I don't think we'd have got lost any votes there in the Isthmus if we'd have lead dropped them.
yeah,
I mean, I don't think they couldn't have got any more voters.
yeah,
But it was clear that the rural, at the end of the race, it was really clear that for the first time, at least in all the time I've lived in Wisconsin, that the people in the towns and in the non-Madison part of the district thought that they had some chance.
yeah, for sure. There's no question about that, and you know, I what was also good is that, you know, when you talk about the rural areas, that we really did some, the pieces we did, we kind of targeted it, you know, so it wasn't this just massive that spread all over Dane County. If we're doing Marshall, we had a special, you know, the people of Marshall, we said need Mike Laska, and so that was.
And the one thing I think that we ought to talk some about is Mike is as good a politician at going to a Friday night fish fry or walking into a restaurant and being able to talk to people and listen to them and come away with some feel for what were their issues.
Morris was, you know, I can tell you I was in heaven when Morris came to help work on my campaign, because there's nobody that I would want more to help me on my campaign. Because this guy, Morris, had some experience, and then, I mean, he was a master, and he just knew what needs to be done. And so you talk about going into restaurants. They had me going, Morris did, into like Sunday mornings. You can't believe the pancake breakfasts I went to in the morning, and not just one. I mean, so there's one down in Stoughton, and I'm there at, you know, as soon as they open the door, having pancakes, and then, you know, there's another one at the church over here on, and I'm going in there, and I'm just going to go in, and you got to eat because they don't want you just in there campaigning. I sit down and eat. I talk to people. I go back in the kitchen, say hello. I would do 3, 4 of those on a Sunday, and then maybe at 1 o'clock there's spaghetti feed, so I'd go there and every Sunday, and then in the mornings too, they had me going into the various restaurants, stop in and just say hello, have breakfast and say hello, and I did all that. Again, it's stuff and sometimes you wonder if it makes a difference, but it clearly does. And I can, you guys had me. There was like I said, I carried 55 out of 60, but a couple of those towns I didn't do well in, I never got down to. And so I think it made so much difference. And sometimes you just got to go in. You walk Main Street and talk to some of the businessmen and just say hello and meet with a few people, and that word spreads. And they say, Mike Blaska was here. So I'll never forget this either. We were Saturday morning. We were out at a place on off Winona Drive there, and you remember that Lisa Nelson? She had an office there, and she was doing a little help, and because she helped Metcalf, and so we had a little meeting out there. You and I can't remember who else was there, but you know who showed up? Tommy Thompson. The governor comes in, and because he was he wanted to help, and he was having his people help, but I'll never forget. He says, and I don't know the whole history back in your days at the WEAC, but I know that I think you had some battles with Tommy Thompson, but I never forget. Tommy said, "Morris," he said, I always wanted to work with you," he says. And I'll never forget that. That was a great moment.
At election day, we, in particular in the small villages and towns, we had cars with microphones on their
big speakers on top of the cars, and so we that was another just incredible idea. That we wanted to spur turnout and make sure that people heard our name right before election, and so I think we had 4 or 5 vehicles with loudspeakers on top of the cars, all white mic'd up, and there was 2 people per car going around saying, vote for Mike Blaska, he's supported. I'm telling you, the people had more fun doing it too. They came back, they'd see golfers, and Mike Blaska supports golfers, and it's like that kind of stuff, and so they had fun doing it, and again, people talked about that, this kind of ingenious type things.
I think that race shows that if you have some fun, and if people get involved in it and let drop and help put up yard signs and help turn out voters on election day, that you can it isn't all just the media. There's a lot of stuff that you can really get your people energized about.
We had a nice too. Morris was good at any campaign, you always wish you had more money, but we were good at the ways we spent our money, and I always liked that too. That you can't, those news you can kind of do those newspaper fold out things, and they're kind of cheap to print. And I remember you came a big carload of those newspapers, and we sent them out. That was really a nice piece because you can put pictures and have a little bit of everything on it. And again, we designed that.
And you don't have to, in this county at least, if you're going to run, and if the city of Madison isn't your base, there's a lot of small weekly newspapers that are they aren't as anywhere near as expensive as the Cap Times or the State Journal or.
Yeah, so we got those out. That really worked. That was nice. So,
I think it's. I'd like to have been in Falk's campaign steering committee at the last couple of 3 weeks, because it was clear that they were worried.
We felt good about it, and I we ended up losing, it was, as I said earlier, it was one of the most satisfying events of my life. It was kind of fun, and and Morris made it that way because you knew that you're doing the right things, and we never really had a a lot of campaigns, you have kind of a kitchen cabinet or something committee, and you talk about, well, should we do this or that? Morris knew what to do.